Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time we're looking into, well, those things we use every day to get around the internet, URLs,
Right.
like, http.google.com or, something a little bit more complicated like https.nodejs.org and blah.
Yeah, those little strings of text that seem so simple,
Yeah.
but hide so much complexity.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to be diving into today.
Yeah, exactly.
Some cutting-edge research about a new URL parser called Ada. And this thing can parse millions of URLs every second.
Yeah, it's really quite remarkable. In fact, just to give you an idea of the complexity we're dealing with, the C++ library that implements the standard that all these parsers follow requires about 20,000 lines of code.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So before we even get into like how Ada works and how it gets its speed, maybe we should talk about like why is URL parsing even important? Like why do we care? What's the big deal about parsing a URL?
Well, imagine you're a web browser, right? And someone types in an address or clicks a link. Before you can even think about fetching the content that the user wants, you need to understand that URL.
Right.
You need to break it down into its individual parts. The
Yeah.
protocol, the path, so you know where to go and what to retrieve.
Right.
And that's the process of URL parsing.
Okay, so it's
Yeah.
okay, so it's almost like deciphering like a set of instructions.
Yeah, exactly.
Before you can even take any action, you got to understand what you're looking at.
Precisely.
Okay, I guess that makes sense. But like why is that computationally so expensive? Like it's just text.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Parsing a single URL can take as much time as parsing 100 floating point numbers.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
It's much more complicated than that.
more than you might think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And that's why a faster parser like Ada is so important, because every millisecond counts
Right.
when it comes to web performance.
Right. So it's like reading a sentence versus doing a complex math calculation.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
Okay, wow. So Ada is kind of like the superhero then of URL parsing.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
Before we get into Ada's specific optimizations, we should probably touch on the rules of the road, the WHATWG URL standard.
Yeah, right. The standard.
Yeah,
Every tech topic has to have its standard.
exactly.
What makes this one special? What's going on here?
Well, one interesting thing about the WHATWG standard is that it's based on the robustness principle, sometimes called Postel's law.
Okay.
And that basically means being more flexible about what's considered a valid URL.
Oh, so it's like the cool teacher who's willing to like overlook a
Exactly.
few little formatting errors.
Exactly. It's very forgiving.
Oh.
For example, it can handle URLs like https.haroldmeyer.mean.
What is that?
Yeah, where there's a tab character hidden in there.
Oh.
Older parsers would likely choke on that.
Oh, wow.
But the WHATWG standard just kind of smooths it over.
It's a good thing, right?
Well, yeah, it has its advantages.
Okay.
A more robust parser can handle a wider range of inputs.
Right.
And that makes the web more resilient
Right.
to little typos and inconsistencies.
Okay, so it's like it's more user-friendly.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
In a way.
But as with anything, there are trade-offs.
Right. There's always got to be a trade-off. So
Actually,
what's the trade-off here?
More flexibility often means more complexity.
Oh, so the parser has to work harder
Exactly.
to account for all these possibilities?
Precisely. And that brings us back to the challenge of speed.
Right.
Remember those 100 floating point numbers we talked about?
Yeah.
Well, that's where Ada really shines.
Okay.
It's designed to chew through those complex URLs without breaking a sweat.
Okay, so enough teasing. Like, how do they make this thing so blazing fast?
Well, one of the key tricks is something called the single buffer strategy.
Okay.
So imagine you're building a Lego model,
Right.
but instead of scattering the pieces all over the place, you keep everything in one container.
Right.
So that's what Ada does with the parts of a URL.
Okay.
It keeps them neatly organized in one place.
So it's like an assembly line almost.
Yeah, you can think of it that way.
Keep everything moving in one direction.
Yeah, and this way it can access them quickly, and it avoids those pesky cache misses
Right.
that can really slow things down.
Yeah, okay, so it's like keeping all your tools in one place so you don't have to go searching for them every time.
Exactly.
Okay, that's pretty clever.
Yeah.
I can see how that would save time, especially when you're handling, millions of URLs.
Yeah.
But what about the more complicated URLs, the ones that have like all the bells and whistles and all the extra stuff? How does Ada handle those without getting tripped up?
That's a great question. And it leads us to another one of Ada's secret weapons, fast path optimization.
Ooh, fast path. Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this fast path.
So you see, most URLs are actually pretty straightforward.
Okay.
They follow a predictable pattern.
Right.
So Ada is designed to quickly identify and handle those common cases first.
Oh, so it's like it has like an express lane
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
for the easy stuff, and then the more complicated stuff can go through.
Exactly. It zips
Yeah.
right through.
Like the regular lane. Okay.
Yeah.
But what about the more complex ones? Does it just leave them stranded?
Not at all.
Okay.
Ada is prepared for those too.
Okay.
It uses a clever technique called hashing
Great.
to quickly identify common protocols,
Right.
like HTTP and HTTPS.
Okay.
Imagine you have a giant library,
Yeah.
right? And instead of searching for a book by its title,
Right.
you have a special code that instantly tells you its location.
Okay.
That's kind of what hashing does for Ada.
Okay.
It makes finding things super fast, even in a sea of complex data.
Okay. So it's like a fast lane for the simple cases, and then it's got this super efficient search system.
Exactly.
So more complex cases.
Precisely.
Okay. It sounds like they've thought of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, did they actually put it to the test? Did this thing actually work?
Oh, absolutely. They ran a whole battery of benchmarks,
Okay.
comparing Ada to other popular URL parsers, and the results were pretty astounding.
Okay. Give me the numbers. How much faster are we talking?
Well, they tested it on a variety of datasets,
Yeah.
including URLs from the top 100 most popular websites.
Right.
And in many cases, Ada was twice as fast as the competition.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot faster than I was expecting.
Yeah, and on one of their test systems, it was handling over 3 million URLs per second.
Per second.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so it's quite fast.
I didn't realize URL parsing was such a bottleneck.
It really can be, yeah, especially when you're dealing with high-traffic websites or applications.
Yep.
And the remarkable thing is Ada achieved this speed while using significantly fewer instructions than other parsers.
Oh, wow.
For example, on that same dataset I just mentioned, it needed 8 times fewer instructions than the popular CORL parser.
Okay, so it's not just fast.
Yeah.
It's efficient.
Exactly.
Okay, but color me impressed. This
Yeah.
is clearly a speed demon. But did they just focus on making it fast, or did they also make sure it was accurate? Like, does this thing actually work?
Of course, accuracy is paramount.
Right.
So they were very careful to ensure that Ada was fully compliant with the WHATWG URL standard.
Right.
They subjected it to rigorous testing,
Yep.
including a technique called fuzzing,
Fuzzing.
where they bombard it with all sorts of crazy input,
Oh, so it's like a stress test.
exactly to see if they can make it break.
Okay.
And Ada passed with flying colors.
Wow. So it's fast and it's accurate.
Exactly. A pretty impressive combination.
Yeah, so this has been really interesting so far.
Yeah.
It's cool to see that something, we take it for granted, a URL.
Yeah.
It's just a little line of text.
Yeah.
But there's so much going on behind the scenes.
Absolutely.
And the fact that people are finding ways to make it faster
Yeah.
is pretty amazing.
Yeah. It shows that even in seemingly well-established processes, there's always room for improvement.
Right.
With a bit of creativity and ingenuity.
Yeah, so for me, I guess the question now is like, does this actually make a difference in our lives? Like as a user?
That's a great question, and it leads us perfectly into the next part of our deep dive, where
Right.
we'll explore how Ada's speed translates into tangible benefits for both web developers and users.
Right, because ultimately that's what we care about, right?
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And we'll even take a look at how it's being integrated into popular platforms like Node.js.
Right.
So it's actually being used.
Yeah, it's already making a difference.
To make the web a little bit faster for everyone.
Precisely.
Okay. Awesome. Well, stay tuned, folks, because things are about to get really interesting in part 2 of our URL parsing adventure.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of URL parsing. We left off talking about Ada's impressive speed and some of the strategies.
Right, like the single buffer,
Yeah, keeping everything in one place.
keeping it nice and organized.
Yeah. But Ada's ingenuity doesn't stop there. It has a whole arsenal of tricks for handling those more complex scenarios that can really trip up a parser.
Okay, like what kind of challenges are we talking about? What do we have to look out for?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is dealing with those strange characters that you sometimes see in website. Addresses things like %signs and encoded spaces.
Oh, yeah, those weird codes. I always wondered what those were all about. It's like they're speaking a secret language.
It's called percent encoding, and it's a way to represent characters that aren't allowed in a URL using a special code. So, for example, a space character would be encoded as pers20.
Uh-huh. So that's how they sneak those spaces in.
Okay.
That's clever, but I can imagine it adds a lot of overhead for the parser.
You're absolutely right. It can be quite a time-consuming process, especially if the parser has to encode a lot of characters.
Right?
But Ada has a clever way of handling this. Instead of blindly encoding every single character, it first scans the URL to see if any encoding is actually needed.
Okay.
And if not, it can skip that whole process entirely.
So it's like checking the weather before you decide to bring an umbrella.
Exactly.
If it's sunny, you can just leave it at home.
Precisely.
Okay, so it's not just fast, it's smart.
It's all about working smarter, not harder. And this efficiency really shines when you look at how Ada handles path names.
Path names remind me what those are again.
That's the part of the URL that comes after the host, like blog or imagescute-puppies.jpg.
Right,
They
right.
basically tell the server which specific resource you're trying to access.
Right, I've definitely seen those before.
Yeah,
Sometimes they get really long and complicated.
they can indeed.
Mm.
And the problem is path names can contain all sorts of special characters, dots, slashes, even those pesky percent encoded characters we talked about earlier.
Right.
And these characters can have different meanings depending on the context.
Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for confusion.
It certainly can be, and that's why Ada takes a multi-pronged approach to path name processing. So for those simple paths, the ones that don't require any special handling, Ada just copies them over as is.
Okay, no need to overcomplicate things.
Exactly, but for those paths that need a bit more attention, the ones with special characters or relative paths, like
Right.
to go up a level,
Right.
Ada has specialized routines to handle them correctly. It's like having a team of experts on hand, each specializing in a different type of path name challenge.
Oh, so it's fast for the simple cases, but then it has the expertise to handle the tricky ones.
Precisely by optimizing for both speed and accuracy.
Right.
Ada ensures that it can handle the vast majority of URLs encountered in the real world without sacrificing correctness.
This is all incredibly impressive, but I'm curious, how does this translate into benefits for web developers who are actually using Ada in their projects? Like, why should they care?
Well, think about the last time you were browsing the web and got frustrated waiting for a page to load.
Oh, yeah.
A faster URL parser can make a noticeable difference in those situations.
Yeah, I think we could all relate to that. No one likes staring at a spinning loading icon.
Exactly. Faster parsing means faster page loads, smoother navigation, and a more responsive overall experience. And
Wow.
it's not just about user experience.
Oh, what else is there?
Well, a faster parser can also improve server performance. When servers can process more requests per second, it reduces the load on their infrastructure.
Oh, so less strain on the servers, less chance of crashing.
Exactly. And probably saves money on hosting costs, too.
Right. Okay. It's a win-win for both the developers and the users.
Precisely. Now, you mentioned earlier that Ada was being integrated into Node.js.
Right.
Can you explain what Node.js is and why that's such a big deal?
Yeah. What is that?
So Node.js is a wildly popular JavaScript runtime environment. It's kind of like a virtual machine for running JavaScript code outside of a web browser.
Okay.
It's used by millions of developers to build everything from web servers to mobile apps to desktop applications. So the fact that Ada is now part of Node.js means that a huge chunk of the web development world can benefit from its speed.
Right. It's like giving a turbo boost to like a whole ecosystem of applications.
Yeah,
Okay. That's pretty amazing. But I'm curious, what about other JavaScript environments? Are there any other platforms that could benefit from Ada's speed?
That's a great question. The world of JavaScript is always evolving, and there are a couple of other contenders vying for a spot in the limelight, too, that come to mind are Dino and Bun.
Okay. I'm going to be honest. I've never heard of those. What are those?
So they're both relatively new JavaScript runtime environments,
Okay.
and they're often seen as potential successors to Node.js. They each have their own strengths and weaknesses, but the important thing for our purposes is that they each use different URL parsers.
Oh, it's like testing Ada on different playing fields to see how it measures up against the local champions.
Exactly. Dino uses a URL parser called rusturl, which, as the name suggests, is written in the Rust programming language.
Okay.
It's known for being safe and reliable, but it's not necessarily the fastest kid on the block.
Okay, more of a marathon runner than a sprinter.
That's a good way to put it. Bun, on the other hand, uses the same URL parser as the Safari web browser WebKit's internal C++ parcel.
So it's got like the backing of a major browser engine?
It does indeed. WebKit is known for being quite efficient. So the question is, how does Ada stack up against these other contenders? Well, the researchers put them all to the test. They ran benchmarks across Node.js, Dino, and Bun, comparing Ada to rusturl and WebKit's parser.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat who emerged victorious from this URL parsing showdown.
As you might expect, Ada held its own remarkably well in their benchmarks. Node.js with Ada was consistently faster than both Dino and Bun when it came to parsing URLs. It was even more than twice as fast as Dino in some cases.
Wow, that's a pretty decisive victory for Ada. So it's safe to say that at least for now, Ada is the reigning champion of URL parsing speed no matter the environment.
It certainly looks that way, but there was one interesting twist in the results. Even though Ada was the fastest overall, Bun actually came in a close second, especially when parsing a dataset of URLs representing files from a Linux system.
Oh, interesting. So Bun gave Ada a run for its money on that one. Any ideas why?
It's hard to say for sure without digging deeper into the internals of each parser. It's possible that WebKit's parser is particularly well suited for handling file URLs, or maybe it just happens to be very efficient for that specific type of data.
Hmm. I'd love to see a head-to-head comparison between Ada and WebKit's parser, just to see what makes each one tick.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to think about the subtle differences in design that can lead to such noticeable performance variations.
Absolutely. But regardless of the underlying reasons, the key takeaway here is that URL parsing performance can vary significantly depending on the environment and the types of URLs being parsed.
So it's not just about having the fastest parser in a vacuum. It's about choosing the right tool for the job. And for developers working with Node.js, Ada seems like a pretty clear winner.
It's certainly a strong contender, but benchmarks only tell part of the story.
Right. We need to see how it performs in the real world. Do the researchers go beyond those synthetic benchmarks and actually look at how Ada performs in like a real web server setting?
They did indeed to test this. They built a simple HTTP server using Node.js.
Okay, so they weren't just playing around with toy examples. They wanted to see how Ada performed under pressure. What did they find?
Well, their server had two main functions. One was simply echoing back whatever text was sent to it.
Okay.
Just a basic test to measure baseline performance. The other function involved parsing a URL and returning its normalized form. This is where Ada came into play.
Okay, so they had like a control group and an experimental group.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So what were the results?
They found that when using Node.js with Ada, the server was about 10% faster at handling requests that involved URL parsing compared to the same server running on an older version of Node.js without Ada.
10% faster. That's a significant improvement, especially when you think about a high-traffic website or application.
Exactly. And what's even more interesting is that the performance difference between the simple echo function and the URL parsing function was almost negligible when using Node.js with Ada.
Wow, so it's like Ada made URL parsing as effortless as simply echoing back text. That's remarkable.
It really is. It suggests that URL parsing was no longer a bottleneck in Node.js.
Right.
Thanks to Ada's speed.
Well, it seems clear that Ada is a real game changer, not just a theoretical speed demon, but a practical tool that's already making a difference in real-world web development.
Absolutely. And it's exciting to think about the possibilities this opens up for both developers and users.
Right.
A faster, more efficient web is something we can all get behind.
You know, we've covered a lot of ground here, and I feel like I've gained a whole new appreciation for the complexity and importance of URL parsing. But before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, was there anything else that stood out to you in this research? Anything particularly surprising or thought-provoking?
One thing that struck me was the level of attention to detail that went into optimizing Ada. For those less common but more complex scenarios, they could have just focused on making the common cases fast and called it a day.
Right.
But they went above and beyond to ensure that Ada could handle just about anything thrown at it.
It's like they were obsessed with creating the ultimate URL parsing machine.
Exactly. And it really highlights their commitment to both performance and correctness.
All right, okay, so we've explored the intricacies of Ada's design. We've seen how it stacks up against the competition and witnessed its real-world impact. I'd say it's time to shift gears and delve into the bigger picture.
Indeed, in part 3, we'll explore the broader implications of this research, ponder the future of URL parsing, and discuss some exciting new avenues for innovation in this field.
Sounds fascinating. Stay tuned, folks, because we're about to embark on the final leg of our URL parsing journey. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite the journey exploring this, intricate world of URLs and how they're parsed.
Yeah, it really is fascinating how something so fundamental to the web can have so much depth to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've learned about the WHATWG URL standard, the challenges of parsing these seemingly simple strings of text at, lightning speed, and then, of course, the impressive capabilities of Ada, this URL parser that's taking the web by storm.
It's really changing the game.
Yeah, and then we've even seen how Ada's speed isn't just theoretical. Like, it actually translates into, real-world performance gains.
Yeah, making web applications faster and more responsive.
Yeah. But now let's step back from like all the technical details and think about the bigger picture. Like, what does Ada's success? Tell us about like the state of web development
Yeah.
and like where things might be headed.
Well, I think it really highlights this relentless pursuit of performance optimization in the web development world.
Right.
Every millisecond counts in today's digital landscape.
Right.
Users have grown accustomed to near instantaneous
Right.
experiences.
Like we're all spoiled by the speed and responsiveness of the modern web.
Exactly. And any delay can lead to frustration and, lost attention.
Yeah, it's true. It's like any lag, even just for like a fraction of a second, can be so jarring.
Yeah, you notice it immediately.
Yeah. And it's like I said, it's like we're all just spoiled now
Yeah,
by how fast things are.
exactly. And this constant pressure for faster, smoother
Right.
experiences
Yeah.
is driving innovation at every level of the web.
Yeah.
From the hardware to the software to the networking.
And 8 is like a perfect example of that, right? Like finding ways to squeeze every ounce of performance
Yeah.
out of even the most like mundane and often overlooked processes.
Exactly.
It's like, finding hidden treasure in your own backyard.
It really is. And it's not just about making things faster for the sake of speed.
Right.
It's about creating a more seamless, a more enjoyable online experience for everyone.
Right. So faster web means less waiting, less frustration, and more time spent, actually engaging with the content.
Yeah, with the things that matter to us.
Right, exactly. And it's about removing those little friction points
Yeah.
that can make the web feel, clunky and slow.
Yeah.
And instead creating an experience that feels like fluid and effortless.
Exactly. And when you consider the sheer scale of the web
Right.
with billions of users and trillions of web pages,
Yeah.
even small performance improvements can have a massive cumulative impact.
It's like that butterfly effect, right? Like a tiny change in one place can have ripple effects
Exactly.
that spread throughout the entire system.
Precisely. And in the case of Ada, those ripples are leading to a web that's not just faster, but also more efficient,
Right.
more sustainable, and ultimately more enjoyable for everyone.
So it's really a win for everyone, right?
Right.
It's a win for the developers who can build, faster and more efficient applications. It's a win for businesses who can deliver, a better user experience. And it's a win for users who can spend less time waiting
Right.
and more time doing the things that they love online.
Absolutely. A trifecta of awesomeness.
It really is. And it makes you wonder, like, what other areas of the web could benefit from this kind of like meticulous optimization?
Oh, yeah, it really does. What else could we speed up
Yeah.
if we applied that same level of ingenuity and attention to detail?
Yeah, like image processing,
Mhm.
video streaming. The possibilities seem kind of endless.
It does feel like a whole new frontier of web performance waiting to be explored.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
And it's exciting to think about the role that research like this will play in, shaping the future of the web.
Yeah.
And who knows what incredible breakthroughs are just around the corner.
Exactly.
Speaking of the future, are there any particular areas of research in this field that you find particularly intriguing or promising? Like, where do you think the next big leaps forward will come from?
One area that I'm particularly fascinated by is the development of URL parsers that can fully leverage the power of modern hardware.
Oh, okay.
Think about things like SIMD instructions.
SIMD instructions.
Yeah, single instruction, multiple data,
Okay.
which allow processors to perform the same operation on multiple pieces of data simultaneously.
Oh, so instead of processing one character of a URL at a time,
Hmm.
a parser could use, SIMD instructions to handle like whole chunks of the URL in parallel.
Exactly.
And that would make it significantly faster.
Precisely. And there are already researchers exploring ways to apply these techniques to URL parsing,
Wow.
potentially unlocking even greater performance gains.
It's like we're going to have these next generation parsers
Yeah.
that are just like supercharged race cars just zooming through URLs at
Yes.
breakneck speeds.
Yeah. It's an exciting prospect, but speed isn't everything.
Right.
There are other considerations as well, like security.
Right, because we've talked about how complex URLs can be and that complexity can sometimes create vulnerabilities
Exactly.
that, attackers might try to exploit.
You're absolutely right. Security is always paramount when it comes to web technologies, and URL parsers are no exception.
Right.
A poorly designed parser could potentially be tricked by a cleverly crafted URL. Something like a malicious link disguised as a harmless one.
Right, so it's crucial to have URL parsers that are not only fast, but also incredibly robust and secure.
Exactly. It's like building a fortress.
Yeah.
to protect those precious URLs from any potential attacks.
Yeah, and thankfully, researchers are, hard at work developing new techniques
Yeah.
to make URL parsers more secure.
They're analyzing URLs for potential threats,
Right.
ensuring that parsers are following the latest security guidelines and making them more resistant to various types of attacks.
So it's like a constant game of cat and mouse, right?
Yeah.
With the good guys, constantly working to stay one step ahead.
Exactly. It is a constant arms race. But the good news is that research, like the work on Ada, is pushing the boundaries of both performance and security,
Right.
making the web a faster, safer, and more enjoyable place for everyone.
Well, it certainly sounds like the future of URL parsing is going to be a wild ride,
Yeah,
full of speed and innovation, and of course, a healthy dose of vigilance
absolutely.
to keep things secure.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive
Yeah.
into the world of URL parsing. We've, explored the intricacies of these seemingly simple strings of text.
Right.
We uncovered the secrets of Ada's blazing fast performance.
Yeah.
And we pondered the, broader implications of this research for the future of the web.
It's been a fascinating journey, and
Yeah.
I hope our listeners have gained a new appreciation for the hidden complexities that make the internet work.
Yeah, I agree. And I hope they've also gained a sense of wonder,
Yeah.
about the incredible ingenuity and hard work that goes into making the web, faster, more efficient, and more enjoyable for everyone.
Absolutely well said.
It's a testament to human ingenuity that
Mm.
we're, constantly finding ways to push the boundaries of what's possible,
Yeah.
even in something as seemingly mundane as a URL.
Yeah, exactly.
So on that note, it's time for us to sign off until next time. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep into the fascinating world of technology.